Hello everyone, I'm Kaya Robertson and I will be talking about the genetic, environmental, and epigenetic factors of anorexia. Eating disorders are very common, with around 29 million Americans experience some form of eating disorder at some point in their life. Nature and nurture, or genetic environmental factors, play a big role in the development of eating disorders. There are many different types of eating disorders, but I'll only be talking about anorexia, which happens to be the highest death rate of all eating disorders. Anorexia is characterized by restricting the intake of food consistently over a long period of time in order to avoid becoming fat or because of the obsession of being skinny. Many people think that you have to be extremely underweight, paper thin skinny in order to be anorexic. However, that is not true. A bigger person can also be diagnosed with anorexia if they meet the DSM-5 criteria for anorexia. Sometimes bigger people with anorexia will be diagnosed with atypical anorexia or subclinical anorexia. If they have distorted body image, they are restricting food, but they are not, or at least not yet, underweight. Some genetic factors are the chemical serotonin that our body produces in order to help with the function of mood, sleep, digestion, and more. People with anorexia have a decrease in serotonin levels, which results in inhibition of serotonin signals. This then leads to hyperactivity of serotonin pathways that create unhappy moods and increase restrictive behavior. But not eating enough carbs results in less serotonin and in turn suppresses appetite and relieves the unhappy moods that were created. This is why after a while of not eating enough, you start to feel less and less hungry over time, because less food, less serotonin, which suppresses the appetite. There's also dopamine, which is another chemical in our body that is our feel happy chemical. Dopamine has been proved to be linked to weight loss, distorted body image, food aversions, and obsessive compulsive disorder. When a person limits their food intake in order to lose weight and then sees on the scale or in the mirror that they have lost weight, this triggers dopamine receptors to release dopamine, giving the person a boost of happiness. Therefore, the person will continue not to eat less and less in order to achieve this rush of dopamine. But this happiness is only temporary and does not last long at all. So it becomes an addicting habit and is hard to stop because the person has conditioned themselves that when they do not eat, they lose weight and then are rewarded with dopamine. Personality traits are also proven to be linked to anorexia, with perfectionism, obsessive and compulsive behaviors, low self-esteem. They are all linked to anorexia. Twin studies are also a good way to see if something is genetic or not, because monozygotic twins are genetically identical, so differences between the twins are the result of an environmental factor and not genetic. Because if it was genetic, since they're identical twins, they should both have it. So if one has it and the other doesn't, most likely it's an environmental factor and not genetic. Therefore, if anorexia is consistent in both of the monozygotic twins, identical twins, then it should indicate that anorexia has some genetic contributions, which has been proven in many twin studies to be true, that genetics do have some contribution to anorexia, because they take monozygotic and dizygotic, which is fraternal, identical fraternal, and in the studies, the monozygotic twins showed, my cat's getting into stuff. Monozygotic showed an increase in them both twins having it, and dizygotic twins showed one of them would have it and the other one wouldn't more often than the other. Some environmental factors are trauma, which can cause a lot of psychological damage, especially at a young age. A study was done to look at how trauma exposure affects eating disorders. They looked at different eating disorders and different types of trauma. There was non-interpersonal, which is something traumatic happened to you, but no one did it to you. It's you were in a natural disaster or you accidentally crashed your car. Like, no one did that. It was just traumatic for yourself. And then there's war-related, self-explanatory, sexual interpersonal. So interpersonal means that someone else was involved. So sexual interpersonal is most likely sexual abuse because someone had to do that to you. And non-sexual interpersonal, which is like maybe you were mugged or something like that, like something that was non-sexual. Maybe it was abuse from a spouse. Of these categories, I'm going to list some percentages, but they're only for the anorexic portion of the study because we're not looking at the other ones. One moment. Sorry, the cat's stealing cookies. So of the people in the study with anorexia, 71.2% said that they also suffered from non-interpersonal trauma, so something traumatic happened just themselves, and then 2% went through some war-related trauma. 34% suffered from sexual interpersonal trauma, so they were most likely sexually abused. 34.2% suffered from some form of non-sexual interpersonal trauma, which could be numerous things. 28.8% suffered from multiple different types of trauma, which is why it goes, if you add up all the percentages I said, it goes over 100, because some people were part of multiple. Social media is another environmental factor contributing to anorexia, because oftentimes famous people or people that are becoming popular on, say, like TikTok or Instagram are typically super skinny, perfect-looking people. Social media is, however, fake, and people only post themselves looking their best. However, we all fall victim to comparing ourselves to people online. This may not be the sole reason a person develops anorexia, but it can definitely trigger someone into wanting to change the way they look, and it'll increase distorted self-image, especially in young boys and girls that are going through puberty, because they're already going through so many changes with their body that they may not fully understand. So seeing someone else that is skinnier or prettier than them can definitely affect the way that they see themselves. Another environmental factor is toxic self-image in athletes. Athletes are typically pressured into looking slim, muscular, and all around in shape in order to be an exceptional athlete. This puts a lot of pressure on athletes to be in the gym and eating a certain number of calories a day in order to keep the perfect athletic figure, as well as constantly being worried about what to eat, when to eat, and how much to eat. This pressure heavily increases the likelihood of developing a distorted self-image and increases the chance of developing anorexia or other eating disorders. Some epigenetic factors are, again, serotonin, but it has an impact on bone mass in our body along with everything else that I said before. Not eating enough decreases serotonin levels in the body and affects bone loss due to damage of osteoclasts and osteoblasts. A person recovering from anorexia can restore bone mass, but it is very unlikely that it will be fully restored, especially if a young person with anorexia has had it for a long period of time. A study was done of 41 teenage girls who were in recovery for anorexia. They were looked at 5 years into recovery and then 10 years into recovery, and the findings concluded that the teenagers' body weight was restored to healthy levels. However, they were unable to fully restore their bone mass. This can increase the likelihood of getting a fracture and osteoporosis later in life. Methylation is the process of methyl group attaching to another cell in the body to inhibit them or change their function. This is not necessarily good or bad, but rather just something our body naturally does. A study was done to look at the leptin gene DNA methylation with anorexia and concluded that leptin gene DNA methylation may have some involvement in anorexia, but there is no definitive proof. Several researchers have concluded that there is not a lot of significant proof of epigenetic factors that contribute or are caused by anorexia, and that there needs to be more research done on the epigenetics involving anorexia. Although each topic was discussed separately, the cause of anorexia is not just one, like environmental or genetic, but rather a combination of both. Therefore, a person that has developed anorexia most likely has a genetic component, like their personality traits, and they've probably experienced some form of environmental stressor that has led to developing behaviors and habits causing anorexia. Luckily, anorexia is not permanent, and there are many inpatient and outpatient options that a person suffering from anorexia can do in order to improve. Sorry, the cat's here. In order to improve their mental and physical health. Some options include getting a nutritionist in order to learn about proper nutrition and develop healthier eating habits. Behavior therapy, which is like talk therapy, can also be helpful. If a person's anorexia has become life-threatening, they will most likely be hospitalized, join a program there, and receive treatment and help in the hospital. Thank you for watching, and here are my references.